You're listening to the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center, Legal Fuel, produced by the broadcast professionals of the Florida Bar.
Welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by Legal Fuel, the Practice Resource Center of the Florida Bar. We're so glad you're joining us. This is Christine Bilbrey. I'm a senior practice management advisor at the bar and one of the hosts of the show, which I should note is being recorded from our home offices in Tallahassee, Florida.
Hello, I'm Carla Eckhart. I'm a practice management advisor at the Florida Bar and a co-host of today's podcast. Our goal at the Practice Resource Center is to assist Florida attorneys with running the business side of their law practices. We focus on a different topic each month and carry the theme through our website with related tips, videos, and articles.
So today we are discussing the working from home trend that many workers have been thrust into for the first time because of the pandemic. Telecommuting, as it is also known, has been around for a while, especially in the tech world, but current circumstances have set in motion what Wired magazine calls an unprecedented experiment in remote work. The article references a survey from the Society for Human Resource Management in March that found that 2/3 of U.S. companies were taking steps to allow employees to work from home who don't normally do so. And joining us today to talk all things telecommuting is one of my very favorite judges, the Honorable Robert Hilliard. Judge Hilliard has been a Santa Rosa County Court judge in the First Judicial Circuit since 2005. Prior to his election to the bench, he served as a Santa Rosa County Commissioner. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Emory College, and after a successful career in the computer business, he went on to earn his JD from Georgia State University College of Law and was admitted to the Georgia and Florida bars. He has served as president of the Santa Rosa County Chamber of Commerce and president of the Conference of County Court Judges of Florida. He is a member of the Florida Courts Technology Commission, where he serves as chair of the Access Governance Board and Compliance Committees. He is also a member of the Trial Court Budget Commission, where he serves on the Executive Committee. Welcome to the show, Judge Hilliard.
Thank you, Christine. It is really a pleasure to be with y'all. Thank you.
So, Judge Hilliard, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your work in technology, both before and after you took the bench?
It has been a pleasure for me to be associated with the advancement of technology in the legal profession here in the state of Florida for many years now. And Florida has led the legal profession in the nation and the world in deploying technical solutions to address the changing world that we live in and the challenges that we face with the increased use of the legal system and the dispersion of our constituency, our people that use the legal system. As you know, Florida was one of the first in the nation to bring public records online, and also we led the way in developing judicial viewers. And the Florida Courts Technology Commission has developed standards and practices and modalities for this. And some time ago, we started this process of remote work. And I'm glad that we did it so long ago because we have certainly been forced to progress at a rapid pace given the pandemic that has occurred. So for really more than a decade now, ever since I first got involved with remote work and the fact that, we deployed these judicial viewers and the fact that you could get to records remotely, I have been saying something, and it is as true today as it was more than 10 years ago. As we deployed this, I said, well, the good news is you can work from home. The bad news is you can work from home. And here we've find so many of us working from home, and now we're seeing a lot of attention paid to how to best manage that home environment with all the distractions in the home environment, and how to make sure you get your work done, and use these newer modalities that we're seeing in terms of video conferencing and telephone conferences and everything else.
So you just touched upon distractions and whatnot, and we're going to get into that. But I wanted to ask specifically, given these stay-at-home orders having sort of affected schools, businesses, and of course the courts, and we've all had to get very creative in how we continue our essential functions. What has been the impact on day-to-day operations of your court in particular? And if any courts, you've heard of any, specific impacts on courts across the state? Maybe some have adapted better than others. What's your take on that?
Well, the most obvious thing is that there aren't very many people here anymore. If I look out the window, the parking lot has a lot of empty spaces, mostly empty spaces. When I walk through the halls of the courthouse, there are virtually no people there. Now, we do have some people coming in. For example, we're still doing arraignments, but we space people out. Many people come wearing a mask now, and we're paying attention to that. So that has been the biggest effect, I think, is that we just are not seeing people. And when we do see them, it is a little different. And we have this constant reminder that we are living under different circumstances because many of us are wearing masks or other personal protection equipment.
Judge Hilliard, I know you were ahead of the curve with your technology background, and I've seen it firsthand, the video first appearances that you do from the courthouse there in Milton. But what are some of the other things that you had in place that helped you shift to the new normal, both at your home and at the courthouse?
I think one of the most important things for judges has been the deployment of the judicial management systems or judicial viewers, where we can sign documents. We can review and sign documents remotely. And this is something that we've been doing for some time now. And in fact, it's the Access Governance Board that looks at this to make sure that it complies with the standards that have been put in place and approved by the Florida Supreme Court. And the fact that we were already doing this, and it was, I won't say a painful transition, but there were people who were resistant to moving toward an online document system. But virtually the whole state now is working with online documents rather than paper documents. And had we still been working in a paper-based system when this crisis hit, I don't believe we would have been able to transition to these video hearings and remote appearances nearly as smoothly as we have been able to.
And do you feel like you're as productive as you were before? And are you able to separate work and home? I believe you said that you're at the courthouse today. Are you doing some work from home during this? Are you limiting the time you're at the courthouse now?
Yes, I am doing that. However, work from home is not a foreign concept, I think, for most of the 1,000 some odd Florida judges in the state. It's something that we have done for some time now, and it was made easier with the deployment of the judicial management systems. And so, yes, but we are paying more attention to it now. And I have seen in the media some tips on how to manage working at home. Those are helpful. And for some people, it is a different thing. Well, I think one thing that is certainly different is many of our team members with the clerks of court and probation people and juvenile justice people, corrections people, some of them are working from home as well. And so we've had to get used to that new normal of interacting with people who are not in the office anymore. There was, a lot of what I did prior to this was I would just walk down to the clerk's office and chat with the deputy clerks about issues. And now many of them are working from home, and so it's a phone call instead of a personal meeting.
And I'm curious because so for years you had basically a video link where someone that had been arrested and had to do a first appearance within 24 hours, whoever the judge was on call, even when everything was open, would go down to the video first appearance room. Are you having any video hearings where the attorneys are appearing by Zoom with you? Have you done that at your court? Because we all read those stories about the judge in Florida that was complaining about the attorneys that were in their pajamas, and one lady I think was propped up in her bed for the hearing. Have you done any hearings with attorneys by video?
Yes, and in fact, many judges, lawyers, and litigants are embracing this video appearance concept. In fact, I know in talking, I'm in close contact with our court technology officer here in the First Circuit, and I happen to know that yesterday we here in the First Circuit had 50 Zoom hearings with 500 total participants.
Wow.
And that's a lot. And we have hearings with inmates at the jail. Those are going well using Zoom. Drug court is working well with sometimes 50 or more participants on the call.
Oh my gosh.
Family law is working well. Juvenile is a heavy user of Zoom, mostly dependency, and the litigants are handling it well too. They dial in with their iPhones on the couch. And you're right. I mean, the thing is, when people come to the courthouse, they tend to understand that they're coming for something important and that they should dress appropriately. And maybe that's a little less so when you're sitting on the couch with your iPhone. But the one area that I can think of right off the top of my head that is still evolving is presentation of evidence. And we're working through that with procedures. Like one of the things that the Florida Courts Technology Commission has been working with the e-portal authority is filing things through the e-portal before the hearing. So as we progress, new customs and means will come into place where these things are handled. But the thing is, one thing, and I'm going to my participation as a member of the executive committee of the Trial Courts Budget Commission, we know that the state budget is going to be impacted by this. We see that coming. And some of these processes save money. And so I think that some of these will persist through the attenuation of the crisis.
So
there's a lot of convenience and low cost that just can't be ignored for some case types.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christine mentioned, attorneys appearing in their pajamas and whatnot. And I'd like to point out that the Florida Bar's Henry Latimer Center for Professionalism has put together a guide, Legal Professionalism in the Electronic Age. And we will discuss this in a later segment. But it goes over special considerations for attorneys and judges. And, a lot of them seem like common sense, essentially how to behave professionally in this new virtual age. But what tips do you have that you have found work for you, both when it comes to setting up a quality home office and then conducting proceedings virtually?
Well, one thing, you certainly need bandwidth. You need to have an appropriate connection. And it needs to be a stable connection. If your connection is down, then you're not going to be productive. I'd say that is an overarching concern. And you need to have appropriate equipment. For example, my judicial assistant has been working from home. And one of the things that she is used to here in the office is a dual monitor setup. And she didn't have that. She was working from a laptop at home, which is a lot different from working on a desktop computer. And so I was able to arrange to get her an inexpensive monitor to supplement the laptop, and that makes her more productive. Mm-hmm. We already mentioned distractions at home. This is something that people, I think, have to deal with in their own individual ways. And sometimes you can even work even with a distraction. I remember I was on a Zoom conference not too long ago, and looking at the Hollywood Square sort of faces staring back at me. And as I looked, I could see the little bald head of a baby poking up from the bottom where somebody had their baby in their arms. And that's fine. That's okay. I mean, as long as you can handle that. But the more you can design a place if you're able to, you can design a place that's designated for work. That's a good thing. That's one thing about coming to work is, you're there for work, and you have fewer distractions. And so if you can have a place, if you're fortunate enough to have a place where you can retreat, then that's a good tip as well. And certainly, yes, dress the part. I agree with that. I'm glad to see that the bar has got that outreach going to. Certainly, if a litigant is on the phone, I hope that lawyers would. A litigant wants to see their lawyer dressed appropriately, I believe.
Or turn your camera off if you're in your pajamas. So there are any number of studies that discuss the benefits of working from home, and that a lot of times staff sees an increase in productivity. However, those studies weren't conducted during a pandemic, where we've had to share office space with spouses, with kids, with dogs and cats. So it's a little bit different. Have you found, generally that attorneys appearing before the court, yourself or anyone you work with, that they're more productive now, or has there been a slump in productivity and then now eventually people get used to it? What has been the trend?
What I have heard from many attorneys is that they, quite frankly, I've heard that they love it for the time savings. And I have found that in addition to saving travel time, there is an element of a more succinct presentation that comes with doing it through a video type link. So I have gotten very positive feedback, and I believe that productivity can be improved, but you do lose the human element. And in fact, I was listening to the gentleman that won the NASCAR race on the news, and he said that NASCAR is a team sport, and so is judging. By the way, there's a lot of people behind the judge that make this all happen. And he said that his team members who prepare the car and prepare him are now wearing masks and protective equipment. And he said he missed seeing their faces, and I do too. Humans communicate a great deal through facial expressions and through proximity, and we are perceptive of many things through our physical presence with another human, and we're going to miss that. And I hope that it won't go away completely, that we will still have that human aspect to our proceedings when we can.
So we said you are already comfortable with technology. I assume that you wear your robe for all of your conferences, because like you said, I think if 9 people are in, I think it's the Brady Bunch. And then you're right. If there's 25 people in, it looks like Hollywood Squares. Depending on how old you are, those references make sense. I would assume that you have to wear your robe. So when somebody's looking at 25 people, they know that when you're talking that you're the judge in the proceeding. But have you had to adjust to this? Because when you were doing the one-on-one first appearances, it's just you in that little room and the camera, and then they bring, the person that's being arraigned, right up to the camera. Are you having to have you found your most flattering Zoom angle and background? What is your setup now for these?
Well, my setup is rudimentary. Our setups depend a lot on budget. You can set up a Zoom conference or any video conference, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever, just with nothing more than an iPhone or I should say mobile phone. But you also can set up a Zoom room, and our court technology people have set up Zoom rooms, and those are very nice. They're reliable, and they have good audio and video. But they cost some money to set up. And in fact, one of the things that we've been doing is the Trial Court Budget Commission is purchasing licenses for these things, and they do cost money. And yes, I'm going to wear the robe. I want people I'm going to give them the full judicial experience. I wear the robe. I think it is important still to retain some of the formality, and we in the legal profession have certainly been good about paying homage to our ancient traditions and professions. No wig, but the robe I'll keep. And so I believe that is important. But one thing that I believe is critical to the success of these things is training and experience. Training, certainly. If you go into this without training, then it could be a frustrating experience, not just for you, but for all the participants. I think we all have been doing conference calls for a long time, and we all know about the dog barking in the background or the person who fails to mute their line or, somebody dropping off, all those various little annoyances that come with conference calls now are magnified because you're not only listening, but you're looking at people as well.
So the Florida Bar has, for quite some time now, had this technology requirement. So all attorneys have to meet a certain CLE requirement in technology. However, we still get calls all the time of attorneys that have never used Word or, can't set up their email. So despite them having that requirement, they've still not been pushed until now. We've all been forced into a more tech-savvy world. And I just, from you, I know my answer to this, but could this be a positive that comes from all of this, COVID-19 situation? And will some courts retain some of these new virtual platforms going forward? Or is it just a temporary sort of fix to the way we do business?
Well, I'm glad you asked about that because I was on John Stewart's committee that came up with the technology requirement for the Florida Bar. This was a long time ago. And of course, he's now president of the Florida Bar. And it's been my pleasure to be associated with him on various technology initiatives over many years now. And yes, that technology requirement is I think has helped prepare us for this. And I do believe that some of the modalities that we are seeing put in place now will certainly persist. As I mentioned in one of the meetings the other day, I said, well, I know of many judges who have tried this video hearing platform and they've developed a taste for it. And they're not going to want to see it go away even after the crisis goes away. I believe we'll see a mix of in-person and video. And where it makes sense to do something by video, we'll be able to do that and save some people some money, save some lawyers some time, save some litigants some travel expenses. For example, even in a criminal situation, one of the big cost savers for everyone has always been a plea in absentia, whereby a plea is entered remotely in writing and is sent to the court. Well, we take some pleas by video now, so maybe we will be able to do that. And so as these things will be good for the the taxpayers because it'll save money. It'll be good for, like I said, the lawyers and the litigants because it'll save time and money. And for a lawyer, time is money. And so, yes, these things I believe will persist. And I'm optimistic that they will persist in an appropriate mix as we go forward of human and remote, human face-to-face and remote appearances.
It looks like we've reached the end of our segment. Thank you, Judge Robert Hilliard, for joining us today.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to appear with you, and I look forward to chatting with you all again soon.
If our listeners have questions, where can they find more information about the work of the Florida Courts Technology Commission?
You can go to the Supreme Court's website, and they have links to the Florida Courts Technology Commission and the Trial Court Budget Commission as well. These are commissions authorized and created by the Florida Supreme Court. You can look at minutes of the meetings online and mission statements and upcoming meetings, which will not be in person. They'll be remote meetings for the foreseeable future.
So today we are discussing the working from home trend that many workers have been thrust into for the first time because of the pandemic. Telecommuting, as it is also known, has been around for a while, especially in the tech world, but current circumstances have set in motion what Wired magazine calls an unprecedented experiment in remote work. The article references a survey from the Society for Human Resource Management in March that found that 2/3 of U.S. companies were taking steps to allow employees to work from home who normally don't do so. Joining us to discuss this is Rebecca Bandy. Rebecca is the director of the Florida Bar's Henry Latimer Center for Professionalism. She joined the bar as the assistant director in March of 2017. Rebecca earned her JD from the FSU College of Law and previously practiced as a family and criminal law attorney in Tallahassee. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Glad to be here. Good morning.
So, Rebecca, can you talk a little bit about the role your department at the bar is playing in assisting attorneys and judges with maintaining professionalism during this time when most are working from home and appearing virtually?
Absolutely. So we've actually been quite busy. We promote professionalism. That's why we were created by order of the Supreme Court in the 90s. And our job is to make sure that everyone is being professional as they practice law throughout the state of Florida and for our Florida attorneys elsewhere in the nation. And very early on in this pandemic, there was an article that came out of Miami, and basically a judge was writing chiding attorneys for unprofessional behavior, such as showing up undressed or in bathing suits on Zoom calls, during Zoom proceedings, walking around their houses while they're talking, or even some were driving trying to do Zoom meetings. And I, of course, was called in immediately to help do something. I was like, oh, ouch. So I actually contacted one of the committees, the bar committees that I had, which is the Standing Committee on Professionalism, specifically targeting some of my judges who are members, to say, hey, what's going on? What are you seeing? Is this real? Is this just happening in this one area? And I received quite a bit of feedback, most of the same, in the same arena, in terms of people taking for granted that, they still have to look professional even from home, and they have to be professional even from home, if for no other reason than to give credibility to their case, to support their clients' cases, but also to make things run smoothly with minimal distractions. And so we actually put together a quick guide, which we put on our website, the Florida Bar website, under Center for Professionalism, with tips and articles to help people navigate this new area of practice in law remotely. And we are presently updating our a document that we've had for about 5 years, which is a guideline. It's an e-guide to communication, virtual communication. And we had updated it actually in December, but we are in the process of adding an additional section to that document, which talks about the importance of professionalism during Zoom or other remote hearings, and also in your interaction with clients, and addresses things like privacy and confidentiality and distractions and how to navigate Zoom and other online platforms. We're working with our communication department to finalize that, and it will also be handy, hopefully very soon.
Excellent.
So let's delve into that a little bit. You just mentioned all the resources your department has, but there's one in specific that deals with those attorneys appearing in their bathing suits and pajamas and walking around their houses, and it's titled Legal Professionalism in the Electronic Age. Can you tell us a little bit about this document?
Yeah, so that's the first document I referenced. And basically, as soon as that article came out from the judge in Miami, and I received fast feedback from my own judges saying, okay, we're seeing some of this. Here are the worst things that we're seeing. These things need to be addressed. My assistant director and I started doing research, and we put together that guide as sort of a handy quick tip sort of format that people can pull up. They can go through it quickly, but it's organized, very succinct, and we have lots of links to other articles that are very helpful. And that was our goal. We wanted it to be an attractive document that we can send out easily via email, but that attorneys can Google, pull it up, and then they have it. And it's simple, stupid, to use that expression, because it goes through the very basics. It assumes that, we're all struggling with learning this new realm of virtual law, if you will. I was just talking to a coworker this morning who's in the office with me, and I said, do you know how to do a virtual background on Zoom? And he was like, no. And he's like, I really want to learn, but I don't know how to even start. Mm-hmm. So I walked him through the quick steps of doing that. And it's very simple. I think we're a little intimidated with the new technology, maybe. Mm-hmm. Some of us, I know I was. Zoom, I'm always super self-conscious when I see myself on the screen in virtual meetings. So that guide is intended for that purpose. It gives very practical, user-friendly, simple steps to making sure that, you are doing things in a way that you'd be proud of down the road, and that other people mm-hmm. can commend you for.
And it should be noted that there's special considerations for attorneys, but also special considerations for judges.
Absolutely.
It seems like common sense, like you said, but honestly, it's stuff that needs to be put down in writing for people to actually realize, like, oh, maybe I should start my Zoom call, a little bit before, just in case there are technical issues, or schedule emails before a conference call or a hearing. Don't just start a random Zoom call. So there's very helpful tips. And again, the title of that is Legal Professionalism in the Electronic Age.
Yeah, it's simple stuff that, if you're on computers and you're using this stuff all the time, it's sort of second nature. Mm-hmm. To be honest, my kids who are 10 and 11 can jump right on. And my daughter was doing a Zoom meeting. She's 10. And for an extracurricular activity she does. And she was on there, and she had the settings all amped up, and she had changed her name on the profile, and she was doing all this amazing stuff. They're on that type of technology more frequently than most of us are. And it's not so second nature to some of us. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of just breathing, having confidence, knowing that we're all in the same boat. I actually live out in the country north of Tallahassee, and my Wi-Fi is not the best. So I have learned that if I need to be on a Zoom call or a Zoom conference or a conference call, anything where I'm using my computer, my kids who are home now, we're doing the homeschooling things, they have to come off of their other devices. Mm-hmm. Even if they're doing it for school, I have to say, okay, mommy has to work now. Please take a break. You have to come off the Wi-Fi. Otherwise, I come across very choppy. My bandwidth is not good. So it's little things like that we're figuring out as we go. I was actually on a Zoom call with some individuals last week and quite frankly got dropped from it. And I had a moment of panic, and then I realized, you know what, I can't help this. I immediately emailed them to let them know what happened, and to explain my situation and that I would follow up, later. And everyone understood. I didn't just disappear on them. And it's just having respect and etiquette for other people and understanding we're all in this together.
And I like that you're covering some of the common sense part of it and giving them some tech tips, because a lot of people's exposure to Zoom before had been attending large like CLE webinars. And so when you would click into Zoom, nobody saw you. And we've been doing those for years. So our CLEs, you click on it and all you see is the presenter, or you see the presenters, they're sharing their computer screen and their PowerPoint. So I'm hoping that those attorneys thought when they were clicking into those early hearings, when we first went into this current period, that they thought no one was going to see them. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on that one. And when
right.
but it's funny because when we talked to Judge Hilliard for the same podcast, he was talking about how there's so many. He had one hearing with 20 people in it, so he was already always wearing his robe, but now it's when you have that many people on the screen to let people know that he is the judge. You need a visual indicator of who it is. So if you have 9 people,
that's a wonderful point.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and use your real name on your Zoom.
not another kind of made up acronym or name.
You don't want your judge to address you by your nickname or your screen name or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Use your real name.
Yeah. So it's really important that I've been able to reach out to my judges, because the other part of it that we're really digging into with updating our e-document is making sure we cover things like how to present evidence, how to put evidence on the record. I have been a practicing attorney in my day, and evidence can be tricky for everyone, but how do you do it during an electronic hearing? I can't give advice on that because I'm not actively practicing. So it's been very, very great to have the resources of our active bar members, our committee members who are saying, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what has worked. This is what has not worked. Several of them share documents which they send out to attorneys who have cases in front of them. I actually contacted one of the local magistrates here in Tallahassee, Magistrate Wall, to say, what's working for you, because I know that she was handling quite a few, a pretty heavy caseload of family law cases. Those are stressful, to say to her, hey, what's working? What are you doing with evidence? What procedures are you using? And so just being able to ask those questions and to understand that some things aren't going to work. We're learning, we can make corrections, we can try to do things better. I think that's so important to get real life feedback.
I agree. And so our team, I feel like we were fortunate. We've made some shifts with technology, but we already had some things in place. So we have a daily morning video meeting. We use Microsoft Teams. That's been seamless. We continue to communicate throughout the day with the chat feature in Teams. And we're fortunate that we've been able to continue communicating with bar members. So we have live chat, our email, of course. We use Google Voice since we're not in the office to call people back. Can you tell our listeners how you feel technology is helping or hindering the productivity for your team? Are you guys operating on the same level? Have you figured out how to do it? Or, what's going on with you and what's working?
We're actually being very productive, and unfortunately, it was from the beginning with that news article coming out. We really had to say, wow, okay, we need to focus on this. We need to get some information together. This is an exciting time for us. So we've stayed really busy. There's only 3 of us on staff in the Center for Professionalism. So I referenced my assistant director, Katie Young, earlier, and then we have a program coordinator, Beth Kirkland. We work closely together anyway. We're a really close-knit team. And so we do more simple group text. We stay in contact with each other through FaceTime meetings daily. But we also, emails, calls, just saying, hey, what are you working on? What do we need to work on? Let's, go through our calendar, that sort of thing. I know MS Teams works wonderfully, so that's another great resource. But for us, because a lot of what we do involves putting together workshops and meetings and speeches and presentations and webinars, we've also been very active with that because that's so much of what we do. We're a very creative group, and I'm a firm believer that structure kills creativity. So what I've found, and I know what my team has shared with me, is that we're actually a little bit more productive and creative outside of the four walls of the office than we are under normal circumstances, because something's flowing, with us right now, and I love the energy of it. And so we've all enjoyed it. Katie's a mom, a single mom, just like I am, and we've enjoyed the flexibility of it while still being productive.
That's excellent. And it's funny that you say that you're being even more productive, because back in the old days before the pandemic, which seems like long ago, people would say, I've got this huge case coming up. I'm going to go work from home because I got to get away from these distractions. So we were doing that already. Yeah. And so I think it's changed some people's opinions. Some people were like, no one is ever going to telecommute at my place. And now we're seeing some of the tech companies that are saying, this is going so well. If you don't want to come back, don't even come back. And like they're giving them stipends to order more comfortable chairs and those kind of things, because it is no distractions, and just being able to quietly think and work things out is good.
Even with the distractions of my kids with homeschooling, that's had its own difficulties. But what I find and what I know is that a lot of the stress in my personal life is trying to stay on a schedule, and I feel like a taxi driver a lot of days. And so my mornings a lot of times were super chaotic. I would get up, and I'm a morning person. That's when I'm most productive. That's where my creativity is. Love to get up and have hot tea and go for a walk and watch the sunrise, and man, my brain just flows. That's me personally. But what happens in the quote unquote normal, routine, normal world is that I was getting up, rushing, getting my kids ready. I'm getting ready. We're in a car. I'm having to get them to school by a certain time. I'm in traffic for 45 minutes, heavy, stressful traffic. By the time I would get to the office, I felt like I needed to meditate and just really unwind to even get started on work. And I've lost all that valuable time. So what I do now at home is I really take advantage of the mornings. My kids sleep later, and so I get up, I do all the things that I love to do. I get a pile of work done by, 10 o'clock. I have been just flowing and getting stuff out, and it's wonderful. Then I can focus on my kids while they're doing their school stuff, and then we spend the afternoon playing or going for long walks. We've gone to a couple of really nice parks while socially distancing, but just getting out, getting that fresh air, the exercise. I've actually slimmed down because I'm active, more active than I am sitting at a desk all day.
Wow.
So it's not because I'm not doing anything magically. I'm not even focusing on it, but it's just because I'm being more active with them and with my pets. And so then once, dinner's done and they're settled in, my kids are settled in, I'm able to pick work back up again. And of course I check in, throughout the day, but to me, as a mom, this is invaluable time. This is time that I know I will never get back with them again. It's time when normally I'm shuffling here, there, and everywhere, stressed out, overextended. And it's been really nice to just breathe and play and rest and read and get projects done that I've wanted to do that, frankly, I don't have time to do when I'm at the office distracted and phones are ringing and people are popping in and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm glad, like us, that you are enjoying this time. But for some, it has not been so great. So Stanford economist Richard Bloom, who's widely known for his research showing the benefits of working from home, recently listed 4 drawbacks or 4 factors to this new ad hoc setup that was prompted by the pandemic. And those are children also at home, which again normally, if you normally work from home, your kids are at school or you have
Right.
some kind of childcare setup, no dedicated workspace. There's a lot of people working from their kitchen counters, from their bedrooms, on their sofas.
Oh,
So
dining
that's an
room
issue.
table for me. Yes.
Exactly. Lack of privacy. So that kind of goes hand in hand. You don't have a dedicated workspace. Your kids are home. Your spouse is home. Boom, you have no privacy. And then the lack of choice. So traditionally, working from home offers this great flexibility. If you have to go into the office for those critical face-to-face meetings, you can do that. This situation has made it so that there is no choice. You just have to be home.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people internally, even here at the bar, we're seeing that. So like us, there's some people that love working from home. Okay, they absolutely love telecommuting, but there's others that can't wait to get back into the office. And we know from all the research that has been done from working from home, some of which we'll link here, having a routine has been found to be positive for your mood, for your mental health, and for your productivity. So what are some tips? You've already given us some, but what are some other tips that our listeners can put into practice to successfully work from home, but also for our managers, being that you are a manager and you do have staff? How do you keep them focused and motivated in spite of these challenges?
Those are great questions. So our program coordinator, Beth Kirkland, who is phenomenal, super creative person, she is a rock star, but she has shared with us over and over again, she's really struggling. She actually wrote an article that was published by the Florida Bar News talking about quarantine and how difficult it was for her because she is single and she's young. She's used to having her friends around all the time, and she's super extroverted. So she loves being at work. She loves interacting and talking to people. Being at home in her apartment alone was a huge struggle. She really was dealing with some loneliness issues. She got down a couple of times, and I'm sharing this openly because she wrote about it and is very honest about it. Her article is so good. So please take a look at that if you can. But it's been hard for her. So what I've done with her is just check in with her constantly. We already do it as a team, but I check in with her, as much as I can. I have socially distanced and, taken meals to her while socially distancing and checked in with her, that way. She celebrated a birthday, and so I made sure that other staff, that she works closely with at the bar, touched base with her and let her know that they were thinking. A couple sent food and flowers over to her house so that she still feels like she's part of a bigger team and that she hasn't lost her network. That's super important. Oh my gosh, the kids being at home, I'm a former educator, so you would think that I would be a rock star at homeschooling. No. We've had more battles than I like to think about, and lots of long walks taken by me blaring, music in my ears to de-stress. So it's not been the most graceful time, but, again, you have to look at the positives, I think. And I have my moments. I definitely have my moments where I get down, and at that point, I make sure to reach out to other people and say, how's it going for you? What are you doing? What's working for you? So communication is a key. Spending time outdoors is so important. I've mentioned that several times. Scheduling work when you're most productive. For me, that's the mornings. For other people, it's at night. For Beth and Katie both, late afternoons or night works best for them. And as a manager, it's important to understand your people and understand what their work styles are and to respect that, but also to give them enough time so that they can utilize that. If I know that they're afternoon or night workers, I can't give them something, at 5 o'clock and say, get this done right now. They need some time to think and to process, and they need to have that on their calendar. So I think that's important. Making sure you understand the limitations of your devices, making sure that you're comfortable with your devices is super important. For me, it's important that I get up and get dressed. I'm sort of old-fashioned in that, I feel like I need to get up and fix my hair and put on a little makeup. And I feel naked unless I have lipstick on because I had a grandmother who was like, don't go out without lipstick. So, if I'm really feeling down, I've got to get up and I've got to at least put myself together somewhat so that I feel normal again. And then eliminating distractions, like you mentioned, is super important. I actually have a desk area, an office area in my house, but I live in an old 100-year-old farmhouse. And that particular area has no electrical outlets in it. So I have had to move my office area to my dining room, and I'm able to shut the door and say to my kids, stay out. You have to stay out. The pets have to stay out, even if that means putting the dog outside for a little while, so that I can get stuff done. And it's a work in progress. But, the kids finally kind of get it. Like, they understand, okay, mom's working, leave her alone. That took a while, but it's the simple things like that. I know that, some of our staff don't have laptops or didn't have laptops before this happened. And so my supervisor is busy trying to accommodate those kind of issues. But, we're all in it. We're all dealing with these. And that's something. I had a call with an ABA committee that I'm on pretty early in this whole process. And many of the people in that committee are in Chicago or New York City or Pennsylvania. And it was interesting that, this is a very high-powered group, and they were dealing with the same issues. One of them had a newborn baby crying, in the next room, and the other one was dealing with a dog barking. And I thought, well, there you go. We're human. So it's important to keep that in mind.
And you've touched on some of the things that I wanted to ask you in my next question, because when we're talking about telecommuting, this is not normal telecommuting. There's two things going on here. You're telecommuting with a pandemic. So so a lot of what we're talking about, I feel like you almost have to pull them apart, even though you can't actually pull them apart. And it's been really stressful, not because of the telecommuting necessarily, but because people are worried about the health of their family members, dealing with possible job loss, like you said, having to homeschool their children while they're also working. They feel isolated. And I know that you personally have a lot of training, and you do a lot of training at the bar all around the state. And you talk about things like emotional intelligence, gratitude, and mental health topics. What are some healthy ways that people from home can manage their stress and fear, this other thing that's overlaying our working from home?
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking it. So gratitude is huge. To be joyful, you have to lean into gratitude. And I'm sort of paraphrasing Dr. Brene Brown on that one. But it's so important that you have a gratitude practice. So it's not just an attitude of gratitude, it's a gratitude practice, and that you understand that you can be grateful even during hard times, that you can find things to be grateful for, understanding that these hard times are going to happen, but they're not going to last forever. And so you can be joyful. And so for me, I get up, I'm, a spiritual person. So when I'm having my hot tea on the porch, I'm usually doing my scripture reading or praying, meditating, whatever your beliefs are. And then I take time to journal. Journaling is a really good way that you can get your thoughts out on paper and then reflect. So when you journal, try to journal about things you're grateful for. I encourage people to list 3 things they're grateful for each day and why. 3 different things. And why. So you're processing it. And you can do this in the morning. You can do this while you're brushing your teeth. If you don't want to write it out, you can do it at night before bed to calm your nervous system, to help you sleep a little better. And then write by hand, because when you journal, it really needs to be something that you're doing physically with your body. And then always go back and reflect over what you have read, and you'll be astounded by how much you're learning about yourself and about what you have. So that's one thing. Gratitude is super, super important. The second thing that I'm really concerned about is loneliness. There was an article, there was some research done, I think it was in 2017, that called being a lawyer the loneliest profession in America. And then the ABA followed up with that with an article by Gina Cho, who I love her work. She does a lot of work about anxiety in the practice of law. She actually spoke at our Florida Bar Convention a couple years ago, the Judicial Luncheon. And her work is fabulous. I follow her closely. But she wrote an article saying that loneliness is the number one health and wellness issue facing attorneys. That seems a little strange to people when they hear that, because they're like, oh, loneliness, that, I don't know. People don't take that word or that concept. There's shame attached to it. But the reality is being lonely has dire health consequences. It's tied to early death. It's as tied or more to early death than heavy smoking, heavy drinking, obesity. Tons and tons of research on this. I often refer people to a UK organization called the Campaign to End Loneliness. The Campaign to End Loneliness, which is fabulous. They have wonderful research and articles and videos that I just love. Their social media is incredible. But the statistics, if you start digging into it, are just mind-boggling. We really have a problem with loneliness in this profession. That's before the pandemic. So with people isolated, even with their families, you can be with people you love and still feel lonely. But people like Beth that I mentioned earlier, she's single, she lives alone. It's just her in an apartment. That's a whole lot for anyone to have to deal with. And so it's very important that we are able to understand what we're feeling, to recognize, why we're feeling it, and to connect with other people in some way. I know here at the bar for Staff Appreciation Week, we did a lot of virtual things where we shared virtual photos of our kids and what our kids thought we did, in our profession. And they were really funny and cute, and the pictures were amazing. We had a day where we shared pictures of our pets and where we shared pictures of our workspaces. And that is so simple to do. And it just, for me, meant the world, because it made me feel connected to other humans, to other people that I love. I felt more connected through that process than I sometimes do sitting in my office at work, where I don't see everybody every day. I may see people once or twice a week in passing in an elevator. So to be able to connect via Zoom and play bingo, or to have a virtual, happy hour, that gave me a glimpse into people's lives, their personal lives that I don't normally get. And I really, really was grateful for that. And it made me feel connected. And so it's important that you check on your people, even if they're not immediately your people. Check on them, check on the people that work on your floor, check on the maintenance staff, make sure everybody is okay. Send letters, send text messages, send cards. All of that cultivates gratitude as well. So super important.
Thank you for that. And I think the overarching theme here is to stay connected, to, practice self-care and make sure that you don't let everything just drop off just because you're working from home. So that's incredibly important. But kind of shifting a little bit, but on the same topic, of course, we did a previous podcast on millennials. Actually, Christine did it because I, the millennial, was out sick. So that was unfortunate. But our guest talked about wanting to achieve a work-life blend rather than a work-life balance, because the two are never really separate, and that it shouldn't be a battle between them in your life. Do you think the blurring the barrier between home and work can be positive? And what has been your experience? And you've kind of touched upon this, but we want to really focus on it now.
Oh, I love that. I love the term blending. I like that. I'm going to steal that. I think it's super important to blend it. I have really loved that we are not compartmentalized, that things are starting to shift so that there is that blend, so that I can be open and honest with people and my coworkers and get glimpses into their lives, and vice versa. A few weeks ago, I had to have a conversation with my own supervisor to say, I don't know what I'm going to do about childcare. I had anxiety about childcare. I typically use summer camps through our school system that have been canceled. Many of the other alternatives have been canceled this summer. And I had a couple of days where I was super anxious, super panicked, because the perfectionist in me, right, that type A attorney, was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have no idea what I'm going to do. And there is this shame attached to that, right? We have to be perfectionists in this profession. I can't say to her that I have no childcare and no family to help back up, So it really was a vulnerable position I was in, and I felt very alone in that. But I reached out to her and said, here's where I'm at. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she was so kind and so wonderful about saying, it's okay. You're not alone. We respect what you do at the bar. We respect your work. We know your kids are your priority. That's how it should be. It's all going to work out. And I was able to breathe that sigh of relief. And I thought, wow, 2 months ago, I would have never had that conversation with her because it was not something that would have been professional to do, right? You don't bring your personal life to work. And when I said that to her, she said, those days are gone. The lines are now blurred. And you know what? It's a good thing that they're blurred. That's an example of, where it's important to say, what are your needs? How are you functioning? How can we help you? Because if things aren't going good at home, things aren't going to go well with your work, right? Or if things aren't well at home, you're going to overperform at work, trying to cope, use it as a coping mechanism, and that's not necessarily healthy as, either. And so I really appreciated that, and I'm really trying to do that with my own staff to make sure that their needs are met. It's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. If your basic needs aren't met, you're not going to be at your optimal performance level, and I so believe that. So love the idea of blending. I think that in terms of our home life, a lot of times, there may be a little bit of inequity in which person in a home does more for the kids. Sometimes it's the dad, sometimes it's the mom, who's the one that always takes the kids to the doctor's appointment. There are, I think I read a statistic that showed that a quarter of the homes in America are led by single parents. That may be off a little bit. That's my recollection. And so this is all kind of bringing all of this to light so that we get a glimpse of how much everyone does and how hard it is, and that we need a support system to stay balanced.
So if our listeners take anything away from this podcast, it's really to be flexible and understanding. Know that working from home may not work for you, but it works incredibly well for other people. So again, just be flexible, try and accommodate people, at least in the times and the months after this is over, I guess, officially. Whether or not that will happen, who knows? But be flexible, communicate with your people, make sure you are hearing them out, and
stay connected.
Have an open mind.
Yeah, and find those moments of joy. Yeah, I love that. Everything you said, Rebecca, was so valuable. I really appreciate that. I am enjoying my work-life blend. If you're talking to me on the phone on a work call, I may be watering my new vegetable garden that I started on the patio.
Yes, I love that. I'm bird watching.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we're all getting new skills. And it's funny to me that we're learning more about each other's life when we have to be in our own home separated. So a lot of good is coming from this, the new knowledge of technology that we've all been forced into. Good things even during the stressful times.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I actually took a class in undergraduate school on ornithology, which is bird watching, and it was not my favorite class. And it's so funny now because I sit on my porch swing for hours watching the birds and documenting them and taking pictures. And I'm like, who am I? But it's so calming and peaceful.
That's wonderful. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our segment. Thank you, Rebecca Bandy, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
If you are interested in seeing some of the resources that Rebecca mentioned, you can go to the FloridaBar.org website and pull up the Henry Lattimore Center for Professionalism to find those documents with all those tips. And if you are one of those people that's struggling and is having a lot of stress and anxiety during this time, we want you to know that the Florida Bar is trying to provide resources for that. And we have our new mental health helpline. So you can call, it's completely confidential. It is 833-FL1-WELL, which is 833-351-9355. So please take advantage of that. Today, we're discussing the working from home trend that many workers have been thrust into for the first time because of the pandemic. Telecommuting, as it is also known, has been around for quite a while, especially in the tech world. But current circumstances have set in motion what Wired magazine calls an unprecedented experiment in remote work. The article references a survey from the Society for Human Resource Management in March that found that 2/3 of U.S. companies were taking steps to allow employees to work from home who don't normally do so. And our next guest, Jack Newton, who needs no introduction for those of us in the legal tech world, but if you're not part of the legal tech tribe, you should know that Jack is the co-founder and CEO of Clio, the most widely used cloud-based practice management system in the world, and it's also a Florida Bar member benefit. Jack has spearheaded efforts to educate the legal community on the security, ethics, and privacy issues surrounding cloud computing, and has become a nationally recognized writer and speaker on these topics. Jack also co-founded and is president of the Legal Cloud Computing Association. He was named a 2019 fellow to the College of Law Practice Management. He sits on the board of Ross Intelligence, which is also a Florida Bar member benefit. And he is the author of the best-selling must-read, The Client-Centered Law Firm. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jack, can you give our non-legal tech listeners a brief background about Clio, your role, and how it's grown to be so much more than just a tech company?
Yeah, absolutely. We were founded back in 2008, which is over 12 years ago now. And when we launched in 2008, we were the first cloud-based practice management system in the world. And that was back in the times where you needed to spend the first couple of minutes explaining what Clio was, explaining what the cloud is, this concept that your data is, and you still do, certainly. But I think the conversation is shifting, and the conversation's getting more sophisticated. And I think if there's anything COVID-19 has accelerated, I think it's the awareness of what the cloud is and why it's so integral from a business continuity perspective. But back in those days, Clio was, like I said, the very first cloud-based practice management platform. And over the course of the last 12 years, we've grown to become, as you pointed out in the intro, the world's most widely used practice management platform of any kind, whether it's on-premise or cloud-based. And I think to your question around how we evolved to be more than, quote unquote, just a legal technology company, it was probably around 5 or 6 years ago that I realized that what our customers were looking for, and maybe even what the industry more broadly was looking for, was a real partner to explore and realize what the future of the delivery of legal services could look like. So a more collaborative relationship than what a typical technology vendor relationship might look like, and a more thought leadership-y relationship as well, where, thought leaders in the industry, some of our most leading edge customers were looking to us to not only implement what they viewed as the future of legal looked like, but to partner with them in co-creating what that looked like. And I really think that's what the last 5 or 6 years of Clio's trajectory has looked like. And one of the reasons we founded the Clio Cloud Conference, for example, which has become legal's best and most widely attended conference. And I hope we will return at some point back to the point where we can hold large, wonderful conferences in person like that. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book, The Client-Centered Law Firm, which was really a distillation of my 12 years in the legal industry and working with some of the very best firms and helping them think about how to deliver client-centered legal services. So that briefly is the Clio story and how we've come to where we are today as, I think one of the real technology platforms, one of the true technology platforms that the very best law firms in the industry are leveraging to deliver better experiences to their clients and to deliver better internal productivity.
And I think it's important to note for our listeners, when you go on Clio's website, you're not just signing up for practice management software. There's a wealth of resources on there that are all practice management related, all sorts of topics. And today, of course, we're going to cover the current situation and the COVID-19 response. So can you tell us a little bit about Clio's response, the resources that you've compiled? I know there's a specific webpage that Clio has put together for lawyers working from home. And there's also the COVID-19 Legal Relief Initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in the intro, you commented on the fact that the technology world has embraced distributed work and working from home, maybe a little bit earlier than the legal industry has. So when COVID-19 arrived, one of the first places our attention went to was how can we help our customers navigate this crisis? And to give you a bit of context in terms of what the story looked like from the Clio side, on Friday, March 13th, we made the decision to send our entire team home. And that's a 500-person worldwide team. We're headquartered here in Vancouver, BC. We've got a large office in Toronto, Ontario. We have an office in LA, and we have an office in Calgary, Alberta, and our international office in Dublin, Ireland. So that meant sending 500 of our worldwide team home and shuttering our 5 worldwide offices. And that's still the case today, over 2 months later. And when we look at how that looked at Clio, one thing that I was really happily surprised by was how seamless that transition was. So the week of March 16th, where we were leaning into this completely new world where everybody was work from home, everybody was distributed. And while we did have a portion of our employees that worked from home previous to the COVID-19 crisis, for most employees, this was an entirely new world. And as many people were perched on kitchen tables and running video conferences from their bed. And what I was amazed by was how seamless this was, because we drink our own champagne, so to speak, and are entirely cloud-based. Our entire platform that we run Clio on, all the way from our customer support hotlines to our software development tooling, our cloud-based tools, we didn't miss a beat. Everybody was able to go and work from home, and we were able to answer customer calls. We were able to ship product. We were able to do Zoom meetings to collaborate, and it all worked really, really well. So as you know, really, once we had shifted Clio's workforce to work from home, our immediate attention turned to our customers, and we asked ourselves the question: how can we help our customers navigate this crisis? And we really saw 2 things that we had to deploy into the market to help it navigate this crisis. One was financial resources. Clio's in the enviable position of having, a real war chest. We last year raised the largest investment round in legal history with a $250 million Series D. And we looked at this opportunity as a real opportunity to repay our customers and the larger industry for all the great things they've done for us over the last 12 years. So we wanted to make financial resources available, and initially earmarked $1 million that we would deploy into a COVID-19 relief initiative. So the financial resources was one part of the equation. And the second part of the equation was expertise. How can we teach lawyers how they can work from home effectively, how they can run a distributed team, how they can leverage cloud-based tools to deliver experiences to their clients and continue to deliver legal services to their clients. So really, it was a multi-pronged investment of both financial resources and expertise and know-how and free programming in the form of webinars and so on to help the industry navigate COVID-19. And those resources, by the way, are available on Clio's website. If you go to Clio.com, you'll be able to easily navigate to our COVID-19 related resources, as well as access information about our relief initiative. And another example of a resource that we launched is a hotline. So we launched a hotline to help lawyers navigate all aspects of the COVID-19 crisis, including the CARES Act and how they might be able to apply for PPP, for example. And we've enlisted experts that have helped our customers and even non-customers apply for PPP, and we've had a success rate of over 75% in doing that.
That's wonderful. And I can't help but be curious. So you said you sent your 500 employees home on March 13th. Like at the bar, we all got sent home on March 19th. And at that time, in our world, there wasn't a lot of telecommuting. That was pretty rare. But since you're a tech company, what was the situation? Did you have some people that were already doing some telecommuting? And I know everyone's home now. Has the process, because it's been so seamless, has it caused you to kind of analyze what it's going to look like on the other side of this? Will you all go back? So can you talk about that, what your employees are doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've seen, number one, about 5 to 10% of our workforce work from home or work in a distributed way prior to COVID-19. So we would, our policy has always been, we'll bring the best talent on board at Clio. And if that means hiring a world-class developer in St. John's, Newfoundland, we'll do that. And in fact, that's something we did just a few months ago. When we hire people in one of our cities where we have an office, like Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Dublin, or LA, we will usually encourage employees to come to the office, because one of the real tenets that we held previously was that the best work happens in person, and truly collaborative work. I always think about the kind of prototypical, meeting around a whiteboard and jamming on an idea and having the ability to read body language and collaborate in person, and the true creative process of building great products and getting to great decisions and so on, really needed to happen in person. So it's one of the reasons we invested in creating really great workplaces for our employees and really great environments for them to do what we describe as the best work of their careers. That's the kind of environment we try to set up. I think what this crisis has opened my eyes to is that we're actually working more effectively than we have ever really over the course of the last 2.5 months that we've been work from home. And we're shipping product at a higher velocity than I've ever seen. We're delivering, our metrics across the board are through the roof. So we're actually all-time new customer records, all-time high net promoter scores, all-time highs customer satisfaction for support. There's not a metric in the company that hasn't seen a significant uptick in the last 2.5 months, both internal facing in terms of employee sentiment, as well as external facing with respect to revenue performance and customer satisfaction and all the other metrics that we measure the company performance at. So it's actually been a very eye-opening experience for me. And one of the themes we talk about a lot with COVID-19 is how it's accelerating trends that were already underway. And I think in the technology world, we're going to see a lot more work from home. You pointed out the Wired article, and I do think we're seeing a seismic shift and a permanent shift where many organizations will not return to any sense of normalcy when it comes to how work gets done. And the number of Silicon Valley companies ranging from Facebook to Twitter to Google have recently announced that they're dramatically changing their work from home policies, or in fact, saying that they're never returning to work, as Twitter did just a couple of weeks ago. Last week, Shopify, which is actually one of Canada's highest profile technology companies, recently announced that they are moving to what they describe as distributed first, or distributed by default, meaning that the idea of an office is changing. One of the tweets I saw a week or two ago that really resonated with me is this idea that on-sites will be the new off-site. The idea that you'll go into the office for a very specific purpose, but otherwise work from home by default. And I think that is the new world where we'll be entering on the technology world, at least for the short term. I do believe that there's many companies and organizations maybe overestimating their ability to move to a work from home model because of the inertia that they had built up around working in person and the trust that they had built and the relationships they had built, and even the plans that had been established thanks to an in-person work environment were all really cemented prior to COVID-19 hitting. And even 2.5 months in, I think there's many organizations that are coasting thanks to that momentum. And coasting is maybe the wrong connotation, but there's that momentum that was established thanks to the pre-COVID-19 work that was done on building trust and relationships. And I think what will be very interesting new territory for organizations to chart is how do you hire and onboard new employees in a distributed work from home world? How do you build trust with them? How do you build culture in a distributed environment? And I believe there's ways to solve those problems, but I think those are some of the places that there will be a lot of organizational learning over the next months and years in what that looks like and how to do it at a really high level.
Well, one, I'm glad to hear Clio's doing great. And two, you mentioned metrics and how you've seen just really great numbers within Clio. But at the same time, we've seen maybe not so great numbers in the legal industry, at least to a certain extent. There's been some furloughs, some layoffs. Thankfully, we've seen a slowdown as of late. But needless to say, the next legal trends report is going to be maybe slightly different than it has been in the past. And for our listeners who are not familiar with it, every year Clio publishes its legal trends report, which provides in-depth analysis on the business of law. So Clio is uniquely positioned to gather real-time data on how this pandemic is affecting the legal community. And it's in fact published initial findings in what they've titled COVID-19 Impact Research Briefing, which we'll of course link to, but we can't possibly get through every piece of data because this is a very limited short segment and it is a very interesting piece. So we'll link to it, read it. But essentially the analysis will hopefully help law firms better understand the impacts of how to adapt and respond to these unprecedented challenges. So again, for the sake of our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about the source information? Explain how our listeners, or to our listeners, how Clio has undertaken this research and how the data was collected and from.
Absolutely. So as you pointed out, we've now published for 4 years the Legal Trends Report, which is, really, I think one of the benchmark reports in legal now that gives a perspective and gives an annual lens into how is legal doing and what are some of the important trends to take note of and what are some of the benchmarks that we see across the nation with respect to hourly rate and key performance indicators like utilization rate and realization rate and collection rate. And increasingly over the last couple of years, we've added to the Legal Trends Report to talk about consumer sentiment and lawyer sentiment. So in addition to a quantitative analysis of anonymized and aggregated data from Clio, where we're able to analyze an anonymized and aggregated data set based on the activities of tens of thousands of law firms on Clio. We've also performed large at-scale surveys to assess customer sentiment and lawyer sentiment. And for example, last year explored how there's, in some cases, a huge divide between what lawyers believe consumer preferences are and what those actual consumer preferences are. And we looked to the COVID-19 crisis and realized there was an enormous opportunity to deliver that same kind of perspective to the legal industry on a real time basis and let the industry know what is going on with the industry at a macro level. And I was actually inspired by OpenTable, who actually published a state of the industry report for restaurants. And in the early days of the COVID-19 crisis, what OpenTable had was reservation data for the hundreds of thousands of restaurants on the OpenTable platform. And you could actually look at the reservation data on OpenTable as a proxy for how our populations in specific geographies, both at the city level as well as the state level, responding to the COVID-19 crisis. And it was this almost real-time dashboard of the shutdown as it progressed. And I realized we have the same opportunity to, again, on an anonymized and aggregated basis, deliver these insights to the legal profession in terms of what the impacts have been on the legal industry. So again, this is a free report that's available on our website. You just need to go to Clio.com and you'll be able to easily navigate to what is described as the COVID-19 Impact Research Briefing. We published the first briefing on May 4th, and we'll be publishing another briefing in June, and plan to do this on a monthly basis all the way up to our October launch of the full legal trends report. And some of the headlines from the report are that new legal matter creation has dropped by nearly 40% over the course of time between late January and mid-April. So we've seen a real slowdown in matter creation, which again is a leading indicator for many important law firm metrics like revenue. New matter creation is of course linked to new legal work, which is then linked to new billings, which is eventually linked to new collections. And we are tracking this data in real time. So in June, we'll be able to provide an update in terms of where we've seen potentially a slight recovery, what this data looks like on a state-by-state basis, and also which practice areas have been impacted. So there's some practice areas like bankruptcy, for example, that are unsurprisingly seeing a huge surge. I believe another interesting data point from the report that's worth sharing is that 13% of consumer respondents indicated that they felt they had a COVID-19 legal issue that needs addressed. And I think there will be a whole new area of law practice focused around COVID-19 and the legal needs that arise from COVID-19 related issues. I think the final consumer facing data point that is worth highlighting maybe at a high level is that 49% of consumers agree that they would put off a legal issue, and a large majority indicated that they would have difficulty paying for a legal issue today. So I think the silver lining that we're seeing in some of the data at least is that many of these legal issues are being deferred but not canceled. So I believe we'll see, as the recovery starts to take place, a backlog of legal issues start to hit the industry, and hopefully a really significant recovery in terms of legal issue creation. And one highlight from the lawyer-facing part of this survey that I think is worth discussing, only because it may highlight some of the fantastic resources the Florida Bar makes available, is that that lawyers are struggling with some of the mental health impacts from COVID-19, as I think so many of us are. So 75% of legal professionals surveyed in this COVID-19 study said they're experiencing more stress and anxiety as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak, and that they are more concerned about their financial future than they are about their health. So some concerning data points from a mental health perspective, from a financial health perspective. And I think an important call out to, always keep in mind that there's help resources available. There's really great resources available through the Florida Bar, and national level resources that are available for lawyers that are struggling. And that did come through really clearly in the data.
I'm glad you bring that up. It's really valuable information you're gathering. And so obviously, the downturn in the billing and the profit area is causing a lot of stress. And so the Florida Bar, you're right, we've been working on this issue for a while. And it's long been said that a good lawyer is a healthy lawyer. So even before COVID-19, the National Task Force had published the Path to Lawyer Wellbeing report, and it noted that the profession kind of culturally had turned a blind eye to widespread health problems, in part because of the belief that it would harm a lawyer's professional or financial success. Can you talk about how addressing and even promoting lawyer well-being can actually be good for business, even during slow business periods like the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I think there's actually, it's a great time to think about how do you focus on your health, and how do you focus on maybe making some of the improvements to your law firm that can help you achieve longer term satisfaction and longer term happiness. There's often, I think, a mentality in law firms and lawyers in general that we're too busy to implement a technology solution. We're moving too fast to slow down and do that. You can't change the wheels on a moving car. That kind of mentality. And I think the truth is that in many cases, for businesses of all types, law firms are just one, you need to slow down to speed up sometimes. And that means making deliberate investments in technology and tools to help you run more efficiently and to help you deliver better experiences to your clients. And that can be hard when things are busy, and it means maybe temporarily turning away some business, or temporarily taking a bit longer to respond to a legal issue for a client. But when there's this externality that is COVID-19 that has caused a slowdown, whether we want it or not, this is a great time to invest in personal well-being, and it's a great time to invest in the well-being of your technology stack as well. So on the physical well-being, there's so much data that shows that mental health is closely linked to physical well-being. So this means going out and getting on a bike, going for a walk, getting the exercise in maybe that your normal daily routine doesn't afford. Lawyers have documented problems relative to the average population and even relative to other professionals with substance abuse. So this could mean, take advantage of the fact that you don't have those fancy client dinners or painful networking functions to attend, and maybe don't need the lubricant of alcohol, for example, to help navigate that. Take advantage and maybe back off on substances that might be helping you get through the normally stressful periods. And again, I think the risk that COVID-19 presents is, as our data shows, anxiety around financial well-being and anxiety around the crisis as a whole can actually compound existing problems really badly. So if you already have a substance abuse problem, it's very easy for that to go from maybe a mild problem to a severe problem. So thinking about how do you take advantage of this crisis and try to layer in some new habits and new routines, and really focus on physical health is I think a really important priority. The second thing I'll comment on is more on how your law firm runs and how you embrace technology and how you are delivering legal services to your client. I think the unbelievable silver lining that COVID-19 presents, the golden opportunity here, is permission to experiment. And I think what is so exciting about the period of time that we're in right now is that we've got, as a profession, permission to experiment in a way that we've never had ever, probably in the the profession's history. And clients are more willing than ever to try new things. And in fact, that's another interesting data point that came through in our data, where a strong majority of clients indicated that they are more willing than ever to experiment with new technologies, that they're comfortable using tools like video conferencing. And we're seeing the same in lawyers, where they're commenting on the fact that they're more comfortable using new technologies and trying new things and experimenting with new technologies. So the opportunity here is to retool your law firm and to think about how do you deliver legal services in a completely different way over the course of the COVID-19 crisis. And I think, again, what's very exciting is that many of these changes will persist beyond the immediate COVID-19 pandemic. So we have an opportunity to redesign how our law firms work. And to the extent that we can find new business models that work, new technologies that we can use to make our law firms run, and maybe new ways that we can work. I've talked to many lawyers over the course of the last 2.5 months, as well as many clients that have commented on both sides. I'm happier and more satisfied in the work I'm doing from home. I feel more connected to my family. I feel more connected to my clients. And then on the client side, this is very interesting. I've heard very positive things as well. My lawyer is more responsive than they've ever been. I find that they're easier to access because they're in fewer meetings and they're traveling less. And I also find, and I think this is a really interesting comment, I've heard it used a few times, I've found my lawyer to be more human, and I like that. And it's these glimpses into each other's personal lives that I think is creating a stronger emotional connection and creating empathy on both sides, where we see each other's houses and our kids wander into our Zoom meetings, and we're getting this personal connection that doesn't exist, when you're in the fancy downtown marble-lined office space that many law firms have. And one comment that I think was especially powerful was, from a client commenting on the fact that he said, "I hope that my law firm," and this was a large national law firm that he worked that he was a client of. "I hope my law firm never goes back to the old way of doing things. I'm getting better service from my lawyers in the work from home situation. They're more responsive. I love the fact that it's a more personal connection. And by the way, I hope they give up their $1 million a year lease in downtown San Francisco and pass those savings on to me, because there's no reason to have this artwork-lined, high-end AAA office space in an expensive downtown locale. You can deliver legal services from anywhere that you have a high-speed internet connection. So one way I've framed the COVID-19 pandemic is as a bit of a crucible where we're seeing, I think, 5 to 10 years of change. And in fact, I now realize that's maybe an underestimate. I think we're actually seeing what might be decades worth of transformation, especially when you factor in what's starting to happen with the courts. We're seeing decades worth of transformation compressed into months. And for the lawyers that can figure out how to navigate that opportunity and how to be agile to adapt to this new reality, there is an unbelievable amount of opportunity ahead. And conversely, I think for the lawyers that think that we can go back to an old normal that looks, or a new normal that looks a lot like the old normal, I believe those will be the firms that really struggle on the other side of this, because consumer expectations have shifted really dramatically, and worker expectations have shifted really dramatically. And it'll be the firms and the businesses more broadly that adapt to this new reality that I believe will really thrive through the pandemic and come out stronger than when they entered it.
I love that you mentioned all of those things, because it's a good segue into talking about your book. So an overarching theme is, between the book, the Clio's research on COVID-19 and our discussion here today is that there's a gap between law firms and their clients. And COVID-19, if there's any silver lining to it, at least in the legal profession, it's that this gap is maybe getting smaller, even if it's,
Right.
people are being forced to, implement all these new processes within their law firms. But can you discuss your book? What is a client-centered law firm? What does it look like? What are some main points that, if you were selling, I already read the book, but if you were selling it to me, what would you
Sure.
tell me are the main takeaways from the book?
So the main takeaways of the book is really, I think, a very clear message that the opportunity that exists out there for law firms is to redefine how they design and deliver their legal services in a client-centered way. And being client-centered does not mean putting your clients first. And this is one of the most important points I make in the book, because that suggests that something else is coming second and another thing is coming third. And we're not trading off here. What we're doing is actually designing legal services in a way that everything your firm does, everything from intake to the way you deliver your legal services to even the billing and the ongoing relationship that you maintain with a customer, orbits around the customer's needs and has deep empathy for their broader situation and set of circumstances. And law firms that think in this way actually have an unbelievable opportunity to tap into what I describe as the latent legal market in the book. And this is the notion that was, first introduced by Richard Susskind. But the fundamental idea here is that there is an enormous opportunity to deliver legal services to more consumers that need help with their legal issue. And the opportunity for the legal industry is an enormous one. When we look at the World Justice Project data that shows that 77% of consumers that had legal issues did not have a lawyer help them resolve those legal issues. When you think about the demand side of legal services being so enormous, and then you look at the supply side, the lawyers that can actually solve those legal problems that consumers have. Our legal trends report shows that the vast majority of lawyers need more clients and need more work to be financially successful. So the supply side is saying we need more clients, and the demand side is saying we need lawyers to help us solve these legal problems. That suggests what I described in the book, that is a product market fit problem, which is a popularized notion in startup land and technology companies. And the basic idea is that if your product is well designed for the market it's trying to serve, there's certain metrics that you can look at to indicate that there's product market fit. And when you look at the legal market data, when you look at the World Justice Project data, you look at the Legal Trends Report data, it's really clear that there's poor product market fit between lawyers and the way they deliver legal services, which I would argue are largely and historically lawyer-centered in the way those legal services have been conceived and delivered. Even something as foundational as the billable hour model, I believe, is heavily lawyer-centered and not client-centered. If you shift that thinking to a client-centered one, we can start to unlock this latent legal market. And that opportunity is one that is in the hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in opportunity. The annual legal spend in the US is $450 billion a year. And that's with just the 23% of legal needs that are being met by lawyers. So there is an opportunity to unlock a huge portion of the market, to increase access to justice, to make clients happier and more successful, and to make lawyers happier and more successful. And I guess the pitch for the book is, doesn't that sound amazing? And I believe that client-centered thinking is really at the heart of realizing that win-win-win scenario.
And I'd like to just for the sake of our listeners, again, because I've read the book, and if you haven't, you should, but you discuss the 5 values of a client-centered law firm. And I just want our listeners, just to give them a little bite. One of them is to develop deep client empathy. Another one is to practice attentiveness. And another one is to generate ease with communication. All of these things it can be implemented really easy, really quickly, reaching out to clients, asking them how they are, non-business related questions, and listen to your clients. I mean, don't just expect them to come to you with a legal problem and you come solve it. They need someone to talk to at this time. So those are really important. And I love that you touched upon those in the book, because they're more important now than ever. So thank you for that. Last question. I promise we won't keep you on much longer. But in the book, you offer a lot of very practical, techie, low-tech, no-tech solutions or action items, as I noted them in the book, for lawyers to implement to improve the client experience and create efficiencies ultimately. What are some really quick solutions that can be implemented while working from home?
I think for one, is a client portal. The idea that you've got a secure portal for collaborating and communicating with your clients, to send them your work products securely, to ask them questions and have a centralized location for all of your communications with a client. You can also send them invoices through a client portal and get electronic payment for those invoices as well. So this is secure, which is important. It's encrypted end to end, which is superior to something like email, for example. It is private, meaning that somebody has to log in to access those communications, and you don't need to worry about confidential data being exposed through, for example, a shared email account. Especially in this work from home world, we see a lot of shared computers and people seeing emails and other communications that maybe they shouldn't. So a client portal can help make sure that the intended recipient is the only one looking at that data. It also really helps with law firm communications, where you have a centralized location to see all the communications your law firm has had with a client. And you don't need to think about, what emails have my partners or my support staff sent to a client in the last few days or few weeks. You can see all of that in one location and have a centralized view of your client communication. So I think that's one. Another is such an easy solve, but that is allowing for electronic payments, specifically credit card payments. You will get paid faster. In the COVID-19 era, this may mean you will get paid, period. And use the flexibility that some tools like Clio afford in offering things like payment plans and installment plans, where you can, if your client, for example, can't pay the $500 for the legal services you delivered up front, you can say, let's do a staged installment plan, and I'll accept $500 payments for you over the course of the next 5 months. And you'll get paid over time, which is better than not getting paid at all. I've talked to so many law firms that have massively reduced their AR by taking this kind of approach to their receivables. And clients, by the way, will really appreciate the flexibility that you're affording them when cash flow is a crunch for many clients and many law firms alike. So this can help smooth things out on both ends. And the client portals, by the way, those are Clio has a built-in client portal that's quite powerful. And many of our competitors do as well. So when you're shopping for a practice management solution, if you don't have one already, get one, and get one that has an integrated client portal, because those are more important than ever. And my final tech tip is maybe look at synchronous communication tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams to enable stronger communication in a distributed work environment. Email really starts to break down when you have a lot of people working from home and start having email chains with too many people on them. And I think we've all experienced that pain. Something like Slack, something like Microsoft Teams, it's an entirely different way of communicating, but it's actually, very powerful once you embrace the new paradigm that those tools present. And Microsoft Teams in particular is, I think, well suited for law firms and is included with Office 365. So many law firms may be surprised that they already have access to Microsoft Teams and just need to deploy it to their teams.
I completely agree. We love the client portals, and we have been using our Teams nonstop since we all relocated to our home offices. Such valuable information. Thank you, Jack Newton, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
If our listeners want to learn a little bit more about you, your book, and Clio, where can they follow you or find that information?
You can follow me at Jack_Newton on Twitter, and you can always email me. I'm happy to hear from anyone that has feedback or a question from this podcast. Drop me a line at jack@clio.com. And finally, all the resources I've talked about, from COVID-19 relief to the legal trends report to the COVID-19 briefing, is available on clio.com.
And I just want to make sure that our listeners know those resources are available for everyone. They're accessible. They're not behind a wall. So go to clio.com and check those out.
That's right. Everything is free of charge and available at clio.com as well. I'll make sure we get the spelling in there.
And we'll post all these resources under the podcast if you're listening at our legalfuel.com website. So this whole episode, we're talking about the science of working from home. And I think some people were really ready to go. They had a really good setup. And others, we've heard from our guests that they're suddenly at their dining room tables and they're just having to, work with what they've got. So Carla and I have talked before about ergonomics in the workplace, but I didn't think we'd have to be talking about it at home. But I found this excellent article. It's called The 7 Things You Need for an Ergonomic Workstation. And experts agree that an ergonomic workstation, one that supports your body in a neutral position, can reduce the risk of discomfort or pain that these stresses cause. So if your neck is bent down or your back is contorted, you're going to start to develop some pain. So we want to help you with some tips on your home workstation, how you set it up. So Carla, what are you doing at home? How are you set up?
So I should preface this by saying I am 5'0". The world is not built for short people. I can assure you that. So I have to really put time into thinking about a comfortable chair. I can't just pick out any chair, order it online and say this will do. I actually have to sit in it because sometimes the seats are too long, so my feet don't reach the floor. And the lumbar section of it maybe is meant for a taller person. So it's like between my shoulders, essentially. So it's really important to get a comfortable chair that fits you, not just the highest rated chair on Amazon or on OfficeDepot.com or Staples.com. You want to make sure it's one that fits you. So check out the return policies. If you do order online, I know we're all stuck ordering online now, but check out the return policies and don't just deal with it because you got it and it's already at your house. If this is going to be a long-term setup for you, or if it's something that you want to have at your home, make sure a comfortable chair is one of your top considerations.
And so I read in the article that a standard desk is built for someone who is 5'10". How tall are you, Carla?
Again, 5'0", 4'11.5" on a good day.
Okay, but not everyone can afford to get another chair. So I know that they said that like some desks have the keyboard thing, but if your feet don't reach the ground or you can't just go out and buy an expensive new chair, what are some things that you can also do?
I have a completely separate lumbar pillow. I could probably link to it from my Amazon that it has a little clip on the back. You slide it onto your chair and you can, depending on how tall you are, you can adjust it accordingly. That's one tip. Another tip I've found is to remove the arms from my chairs. I know a lot of people walk into my office and think it's weird that I have one arm, and not the other. But I want to fit comfortably below my desk. And sometimes, depending on the desk and the chair combo, that's not a viable option. So know that most chairs have removable arms, and you also want to try and get a chair that perhaps adjusts. So the more adjustments, the better. It may seem complicated, but I promise you won't regret it. And as far as the desk goes, if you have to adjust the height of your computer, anything, if you need to prop some books up, that's not recommended, but, make sure that your desk is at a proper level to where you're sitting up straight. And again, it's a matter of testing it out. So if you find a desk that's just too big or too small for you, then return it.
Yes. And you can even, depending on how long we don't know how long this is going to last. You're going to be at home for a while. So there's some very good tips in here. The height adjustable desks, there's a link to that in the article. I've seen those at IKEA. So maybe you love your chair, but it's not working with your dining room table, but you do have a little corner. I love how they have something for every space. What is your lighting situation? What are you finding?
So as you know, I get migraines. I do not like fluorescent lighting and generally overhead lighting. It just hits my eyeballs the wrong way and it is a quick migraine trigger. So I have a lot of task lighting. And that's my setup. That's important to me. And again, it has to be how you're comfortable. If at the end of the day, you have this horrible bulb over your head and you find yourself fatigued and tired as a result of lighting, well, that's an easy change. Change your lighting.
Mm-hmm. And it was interesting in this article, it talks about how if I'm hunched over at a laptop at work, I have the dual monitor set up and I can slide them up and down. But it was interesting that the article was talking about whether you're typing on your keyboard or then you're using your mouse, that actually, depending on what you're doing, you may need to adjust the height of your keyboard. So an adjustable keyboard. Also, I didn't think about this. I have one of those at work. I have the keyboard that has the little legs that flip out on the back.
Yeah, flip your keyboard over.
It said never use those. That puts your wrists in the wrong position. Your wrists are angled up. You want them to angle down.
But it depends. So like maybe you already have a wrist rest. So if you flip it up, it may still angle down again. There's no one size fits all. So I know a lot of times you go to work and you're like, well, this is what my boss gave me. I'm stuck with it. And that's not good for your overall mental health, physical health. So again, no one size fits all. It has to feel comfortable to you, because what feels comfortable to 5'0" me is certainly not going to be comfortable for Christine, who is a, average sized woman. I think you're tall.
I'm tall.
I'm just gonna put it out there. You're pretty tall.
And we talk a lot. So in this episode, we talk about stress and anxiety. So we don't want one of the sources of your stress to be your home workplace. So some of the things that are touched on in this article, please take a look at it. We're posting it where it tells you about the neutral position and how to measure if you're sitting in the right position. But it also talks about some important things. And we talked about this when we were still at work. Get yourself some noise canceling headphones to drown out annoying sounds, especially if you don't have. Yeah, if you have kids.
I'll say it. I mean, it's just kids are always going to come first. If your kid's, talking to you, however nonsensical it may be, you're going to pay attention to your kid rather than your work. Whereas maybe if they see you with headphones on, they might get a clue.
And it also, at the end, this is an important thing, because I think we all thought this was going to last a couple of weeks and then we'd be back. So we're going to be here for the long haul. So if you've got your seat in a comfortable position, maybe when you're in line at Trader Joe's, grab yourself a little house plant to put on your home workstation. If you have an oil diffuser, drag it over to your home workstation. Go ahead and set it up like we are going to be here for a while. Or do you have any other tips, Carla?
I can only give you tips, anecdotal tips that I have found work for me. And as far as the workstation goes, a dedicated workstation for me is a must. When we first started this, I was using my laptop and I was, going from the couch, to the dining room table, to the desk. And my desk was actually upstairs. We ended up actually building a proper office area, putting together a proper office area. And it completely changed how my workday went. So make it work, even if it is your dining room table. Set it up in a way, maybe reorient it in a way to where it feels more like a desk. Because again, it's not good if you think if you're sitting at an uncomfortable chair, you're not going to want to sit there. So it's like not wanting to go to work. Even though you're home, you don't want to go to work because you're uncomfortable all day.
Yeah. And you make a good point. Having a dedicated workspace is also healthy. So when the day is over, if you are fortunate enough to have an area that you can close the door on that space,
Yes.
or you just know that that's the place where you work. So you know, whatever you've set up at home. And I love this point in the article. It says, most importantly, play around with your setup. Try raising or lowering your monitor, adjust your chair, alternate between sitting and standing, and note how your body feels after 30 minutes or more. Like, I think that's one of those mindful things when you're so busy working, you don't notice that you now have a crick in your neck.
Right.
So after 30 minutes, even set a little timer and go, okay, how am I feeling? And keep on fine tuning until you get what they call the Goldilocks level of your workspace being just right.
Right. When you find yourself comfortable enough to, where you can say, oh, I could actually use this space going forward. That's when you found that. And for me, that's definitely been the case ever since I've gotten all set up. So again, no one size fits all, but it is something that it's important to consider, because even though you may not realize how it's affecting you, it is comfort and focus and productivity are affected by your workspace.
And it's worth investing a little bit of effort, maybe a little bit of money, because even on the other side of this, when we go back, we might all have a new blended situation where we still are doing some work from home. So go ahead and find something that works for you. If you like what you heard today, please rate us in Apple Podcasts. Join us next time for another episode of the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by Legal Fuel, the Practice Resource Center of the Florida Bar. I'm Christine Bilbrey.
And I'm Carla Eckhart. Until next time, thank you for listening.
If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit legalfuel.com. Don't miss an episode by subscribing to the Florida Bars Podcast via iTunes, Google Podcast, Spotify, and RSS. Find the Florida Bars Practice Resource Center, Legal Fuel, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, the Florida Bar. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.